Hey guys, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Basics Part 3 by SA Scrubs. Now, Part 2 was a bit a while ago, but that's because I had a bit of a hiatus. Just tried to make sure I get the right information across to you guys and I can do it all properly. As along with other commitments, we had to make sure that we provide the best information that we could and make sure we didn't provide any of you guys with any bad information. So, see how this goes and let me know what you guys think. Now, what we're going to have a look at in this video is the fast effect timing chart for one, problem solving card text that breaks into different categories, distinguishing costs, recognizing effects, activation conditions, terminology and phrasing, and conjunctives. First up, we have the fast effect timing chart. So this is essentially the be all and end all of how Yu-Gi-Oh! Turns are meant to structure, like how play progresses and everything like that. So make sure you have a great read through of this. Follow the steps. It's got pretty easy steps to look at, so make sure you have a look through it and make sure you understand how the game actually works and take note of things that trigger, take note of chain rules, and take note of other things that do not start chains, which you can see in the first blue box where it says turn player takes an action that does not start a chain. Make sure you have a look at that and understand that. And good thing to note, both players must agree to go on to the next phase. Sometimes you get a bit confused, especially newer players. Say a player wants to go from main phase to battle phase. The turn player wants to move across the phases. The opponent says, no, I've got an effect to activate in the main phase, such as RP Masquerader, Ultimate Conductor, or cards like that say they have to be in the main phase, even Nibiru. Now, they can go back, stay in the main phase, because they haven't decided to move along to the battle phase yet, so they're still in the main phase, activate the effect. Play progresses, we're back at open game state, and turn player is still in their main phase, because both players didn't agree to pass to the next phase, so we're still in the open phase, so we're in A, in that green box. Problem solving card text, so this is easily the most complicated part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Outlines many different subcategories that we'll cover, so distinguishing costs, recognizing effects, activation conditions, terminology and phrasing, and conjunctives. Distinguishing costs can be very hard for older players, like with older cards, because they don't have the same colons or semicolons or text as what the new cards do, thanks to problem solving card text. The cost is an action that must be performed in order to activate a card or effect to perform another action or to keep a card on the field. So there's like activation costs, effect costs, and maintenance costs. So cards with activation costs will have a semicolon. So cards like Trade-In, as you can see there, it has a semicolon after saying discard one level 8 monster, semicolon, draw 2 cards. So the cost is to discard a level 8 monster, and then you can draw 2 cards. Costs cannot be negated and happen at activation, not resolution. So you can't activate Ash Blossom to stop something, or stop something sending to grave as costs, like Dante, or Ghost Bell on a double evolution pill, which I've had people try to do before because it banishes as cost. So make sure you understand what cost is. If you don't know whether it's cost or not because you have a really old card printed before PSCT, check with your judge, your head judge at your locals or at your regionals or YCS or wherever you're playing. And costs usually require a player to make a sacrifice of something. Costs must be fully paid if a card requires the cost of sending a card to the graveyard, but Macrocosmos is activated, then the cost cannot be paid, the card cannot be activated. So one example of that is Naturia Beast. Its cost is to send cards to the graveyard. If Macrocosmos is up, there is no graveyard, so you cannot physically pay cost. Other costs such as the Unending Nightmare, you can pay 1000 life points and target a spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. So you can see where the semicolon is just before the destroy it, but target one face up spell or trap on the field is not an activation cost, it's just a requirement of activation. So you pay the 1000 life points, that's your cost, and then you choose a target. So that happens on activation. So you make sure you do that first, and don't get confused, and try not to confuse target and cost together. They're different things, but they're sometimes hand in hand. So make sure you understand a little bit of that. They are different and do mean different things, so just understand that. And there's a maintenance cost. So once per turn, during the standby phase, you must pay 700 life points. So this is not optional, or this card is destroyed. So that's a cost for a maintenance, but it's not like doesn't activate. As you can see, it doesn't have the colon or semicolon where usual cards do. There are other maintenance costs such as Spiral Resort, which also shuffles cards back into the deck. So just have a look at your cards, read them, and understand where costs and maintenance costs are. So, recognizing effects. So effects and activations are sometimes confused with one another. When a spell card is played on the field, it is considered activated. In most cases, when a spell is activated, it starts a chain. Activations on monster effects or card effects that start a chain are shown by a colon in the card text. Now, make sure you understand that when you activate the spell card, so first place a spell or trap onto the field. So let's just say spell card. Traps get a bit more confusing, but activate a spell card such as Pot of Greed. It's activating as soon as you put it on the field. It's not an effect activating, it's an activation of a card, spell card. Whereas you'll have other card effects that stay on the field, such as continuous spells that have an extra effect that activate while they're still on the field, and that's an effect activating. So such as a field spell activating or something like that. So Union Hanger is on the field, for example. You normal summon a Assault Core. Union Hanger activates because it met its trigger. That's an effect activating, so you can't negate the activation of it because it's already activated. The card itself is already activated. It's the effect of the card activating. So make sure you understand that. Check that it's not exactly the same. And activations and effects, there is a little bit of a difference with it. There are also some continuous or inherent effects. Inherent is not a proper Konami term. That do not start a chain, such as summon of Chaos Dragon Legionnaire or Vanity Fiend. The Vanity Fiend, when it's summoned, it has a continuous blanket effect that neither player can special summon. Chaos Dragon Legionnaire just banishes 3 from the graveyard to summon itself. It doesn't activate until its other effect. So the summon of it does not activate. Does not start a chain. Now, activation conditions. So it's a condition required for a card to activate. It's usually a trigger or something like that, which we talked about earlier, but make sure you understand where they are. So usually it's written before a colon, but older cards do not have problem solving card text, as we have said before. So if you have a look, there's a simple one. When the opponent's monster declares an attack, there it is. Destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. So there's the condition. Your opponent's monster declaring an attack is the condition for Mirror Force to be able to activate. So then the rest of the effect will go through. I've added Triple Tactics Talent because it's a newer card and a lot of people will probably start using it or seeing it around the place. So if your opponent has activated a monster effect during your main phase this turn, that's the condition, activate one of these effects. So this has 2 different parts here. So you've got the activation condition, the requirement that you need. So if your opponent has activated a monster effect during your main phase, so it has to be in your main phase, and your opponent has to have activated a monster effect. So it could be something like a hand trap, that's usual, or a monster negate on board, or there could be anything else. As long as it's a monster effect that's activated during your main phase, you can activate this card. So there's 3 different effects you can do here. So you can either draw 2 cards, take control of one of your opponent's monsters into the end phase, or look at your opponent's hand, choose 1 card from it and shuffle it into the deck. So when this card is activated, you have to choose one. You can't just activate the thing and say, yeah, I'm activating it. Like, what one are you activating? Are you adding cards? Are you taking a monster? Or are you looking at cards? So it says activate one of these effects. So you can only choose one. So you choose one on activation. Now here's some odd stuff. So terminology and phrasing. I've picked up a couple of cards that do the same thing. They target monsters in the graveyard, but they have different text, so you can see a little bit of difference. So I'll go through the writing first. So we've got attack or original attack. So there's 2 different things. Okay, so attack and original attack. So for example, let's just say I've got an Ultimate Conductor on the field. It's got 3,500 attack. My opponent uses Forbidden Chalice on it, loses 500 attack. Its original attack is still 3,500. Its attack now is 3,000. So you say a card like Crusader Echomax. We had this example the other week. One of my friends actually asked me about it. We had a bit of a discussion about it because there was a bit of a ruling that I had to pull down. It wasn't too bad. It's just about reading cards, but that's the thing. It's the original attack and attack. So Crusader Equimax is pointing to a card, and say the card has 1500 attack points. Equimax attacks, someone activates Honest. Card gains attack. Does Equimax gain attack? No. Because Honest is boosting the attack, not the original attack. Equimax, it says on the card, it gains original attack. So whatever its attack originally was, is what it gains. It doesn't gain any more than that. So if it gets boosted, it doesn't really matter. It's still going to have the same attack as what the other one did before he attacked. Now, that target or those targets, it and they or them, they're all kind of together. So I've got two examples, Pot of Avarice and Gookie Rematch. So Pot of Avarice, target 5 monsters in your graveyard, shuffle all 5 into the deck, then draw 2 cards. For Gookie Rematch, target 2 Gookie monsters in your graveyard with different levels, special them in defense position. So you can see that Pot of Avarice says shuffle all 5 into the deck. Gookie Rematch says special summon them in defense position. So make sure you understand those words, that them and all 5, they have to stay there to resolve. So say your opponent activates Pot of Avarice, you can chain DD Crow, target one of those monsters that they target in their graveyard with Pot of Avarice, and they don't shuffle any. The effect just technically fizzles, but fizzles is not a word that you should be using. It just resolves without effect. Whereas if you use DD Crow on a Gookie Rematch, one of the 2 monsters, they still summon because it says them, not all 5. So they've changed the card text a little bit. I think they changed the Pot of Avarice, but they did make it a bit more concise and a bit more easy to understand. There's other things like can only activate this card once per turn, negated, use, negated, or effect or activations. So you can see on Gookie Rematch it's gone, you can only activate 1 Gookie Rematch per turn. So even if you have another Gookie Rematch, even if it's a different card, you can't activate it. Whereas there's other cards that say you can only activate this card once per turn. If you get another one of them, you can activate it again. So say you use the card, it goes to the graveyard, you get it back, you can use it again because it says it's not the same card. Because it's not a hard once per turn, it's only a soft once per turn. If the activation of a card is negated and it says can only activate this card once per turn, so say someone Solemn Judgments your Gookie Rematch, you can only activate 1 Gookie Rematch per turn. You never actually activated it because the activation was negated, so you can activate another one after that. Just to understand that. But other cards now say use the effect. If that effect or activation is negated, it doesn't matter, you cannot use it again because you've already attempted to use it. I know it's a little bit confusing with the activation negated and the use negated and the effect negated, but they say someone has a card that says draw 5 cards, you can only activate this once per turn. So you use Ash Blossom, it only negates the effect. So you will not be able to activate another one because the effect was negated, not the activation. There's a few different things. You just kind of have to look at cards, read them, and understand them a little bit more. Take a bit of time just to understand what cards do, how the text works, and how everything goes along together. Now, quick effect and during the player's turn mean the exact same thing. So they're both quick effects, and they can both be activated during either player's turn. So it's pretty simple, really. I'm going to go through conjunctives on this next slide because there is a lot to them. Now, there's a lot of text here. I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm going to go through a couple of examples, but this table is extremely good, guys. I found this table. It'll tell you how the effects resolve and which ones are required. So it resolves sequentially if it's also, or after that, or then. And it goes simultaneously if it says also, and if you do, an end. Then you have to look at which parts are required. So you do A, then B, which parts are required. So neither are required if you do also, after that, or also. Whereas A, then, and if you do, require A to be done before you can do B. So you need to do A, then B. A, and if you do, B. Whereas and means both have to work. So if it says gain attack and special summon a monster from the graveyard, that monster gets DD crowed, then you don't do any effect because it's an end. Whereas if it's gain 500 attack and if you do special summon a monster from the graveyard, so you gain the 500 first and try and special summon from the graveyard. But if it gets DD crowed, then you still got A because it's only 8 is required. Now, I'll let you guys go through all of that a bit more. Feel free to pause the video and read through all of those. If you need any more information, make sure you check out the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki. That's where I've gained a lot of information through there and the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Site, which you can find on the link to it on the Fast Effects timing chart slide. That'll be it for today, guys. Thanks for your patience and waiting for this episode. I know it is a bit longer, a bit more in-depth. There's a lot to go into it. So I'm going to see what else you guys would like to see. Would you like to see more problem-solving card text examples? So actual card examples? You guys want to give me a couple of card examples that you guys are very unsure of? Then chuck them to me. I'll give you some ease of how to read through them properly and you can understand Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit better. Also, other things we can go through is like deck building mechanics, so the statistics and math, card choices and plans for deck building, because you don't just throw cards into a deck and say, hey, this works. Like, you're not going to throw a Ultimate Conductor into a Dark Magician deck if you've got no other dinosaurs in the deck, because then you cannot physically summon it. So, little things. That's a stupid example, but hey, I've seen worse, so... If there's anything else in the game that you don't quite understand, feel free to let me know. Comment down in the video below and tell us your suggestions. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.